So Psalm 37, just a couple things before we read, or one thing before we read. One, and that is that as we read, just to be aware, Psalm 37 is an acrostic psalm. In other words, the letters of the Hebrew alphabet start the beginning of each stanza in this song or poem. Our verses in our English Bibles aren't completely correct in terms of the Hebrew poetry. And so our versions have 40 verses. Hebrew has 22 letters in the alphabet. And so the way they divided up the verses wasn't quite right. But most of the time, it's about 2 verses of our verse per letter. So, and that maybe is helpful as we read, just to recognize, this psalm doesn't have like big sections of things on a particular topic or, really building a case. It's much more, each of these verses is a separate point or statement. There's a lot of things that are kind of said again in different words. And so just the way that it's written makes more sense if you recognize it's an acrostic poem. And so just to be aware of that as we read. So I think we got all of the verses picked up. So if you have, starting in Psalm 37, verse 1, let's go ahead and we'll just read all the way through the psalm.
Do not fret because of evildoers. Be not envious toward wrongdoers, for they will wither quickly like the grass and fade like the green herb. Trust in the Lord and do good. Dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness. Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart. Commit your way to the Lord. Trust also in him, and he will do it. And he will bring forth your righteousness as the light, and your judgment as the noonday.
Be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. Fret not yourself over him who prospers in his way, or over the man who carries out evil devices. Refrain from anger and forsake wrath. Fret not yourself, it tends only to evil. For the wicked shall be cut off, but those who wait for the Lord shall possess the land. Yet a little while, and the wicked will be no more. Though you look well at his place, he will not be there. But the meek shall possess the land and delight themselves in abundant prosperity. The wicked plots against the righteous and gnashes his teeth at him. But the Lord laughs at the wicked, for he sees that his day is coming.
The wicked draw the sword and bend the bow to bring down the poor and needy, to slay those whose ways are upright. But their swords will pierce their own hearts, and their bows will be broken. Better the little that the righteous have than the wealth of many wicked. For the power of the wicked will be broken, and the Lord upholds the righteous. The days of the blameless are known to the Lord, and their inheritance will endure forever. In times of disaster, they will not wither. In days of famine, they will enjoy plenty. I got one more, sorry. But the wicked will perish. The Lord's enemies will be like the beauty of the fields. They will vanish like smoke.
The wicked borroweth and payeth not again, but the righteous showeth mercy and giveth. For such as be blessed of him shall inherit the earth, and they that be cursed of him shall be cut off. The steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord, and he delighteth in his way. Though he fall, he shall not be utterly cast down, for the Lord upholdeth him with his hand. I have been young, and now am old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging bread. He is ever merciful and lendeth, and his seed is blessed.
Depart from evil and do good, and you will dwell securely in the land forever. For the Lord delights in justice and does not abandon his saints. faithful ones. They are preserved forever. But the descendants of the wicked will in time be cut off. The righteous will inherit the land and live in it forever. The mouth of the righteous proclaims wisdom, and his tongue speaks justice and truth. The law of his God is in his heart. Not one of his steps will slip. The wicked lies in wait for the righteous and seeks to kill him. The Lord will not leave him in his hand or let him be condemned when he is judged.
Wait for the Lord and keep his way. He will exalt you to inherit the land. When the wicked are cut off, you will see it. I have seen a wicked and ruthless man flourishing like a green tree in its native soil. But he soon passed away and was no more. So I looked for him, he could not be found. Consider the blameless, observe the upright. This is the future for the man of peace. But all sinners will be destroyed. The future of the wicked will be cut off. The salvation of the righteous comes from the Lord. He is their stronghold in the time of trouble. The Lord helps them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them because they take refuge.
Thank you. There's one other note before we start on the questions, and that is the introduction to this psalm is very short. All it says is this is Psalm of David. But look at verse 25. What do you see in that verse that gives us a clue to David's situation in life when he wrote this psalm? Yeah. Yeah, we usually think about David as, this young man fighting Goliath, a young, mighty warrior king. But this particular psalm, at least, David didn't write until he was older. And he was looking back on his life and, just kind of taking stock and seeing what's what. So just, another little thing to notice about this psalm. There's a lot in this psalm. It's a long psalm. We probably won't cover all these questions even. But, if there are things that you see that you have questions on or comments on, feel free to bring that up because we can't cover everything. So we'll start with question 1. How would you describe the problem David is addressing in this psalm? You think of the psalm as a whole. How would you describe the problem he's addressing?
Wicked enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And,
He talks about wicked enemies for
Yes.
sure.
and how they prosper.
Okay, and it seems like they are getting along just fine.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that's the challenge.
It was kind of the sense of injustice.
Yes, yeah.
I mean,
Seems like there's injustice.
if you're with God, it should be blessed.
Yeah, and the way we think about things, if you do good, if you follow God, things should kind of go pretty well. And if you do evil and rebel against God, you should have problems. That's kind of makes sense. And so what we see in this world a lot of the time seems to contradict that. And the question comes, is there any moral order in this world? Does it matter? Is there right and wrong? Is there good and bad? Is there true and false? If the wicked prosper, maybe we should just throw up our hands and join them. And so that's the challenge as he begins, looks at this psalm, and we'll see, hopefully, how he responds to it. Question 2 then, really kind of getting to the heart of what he says for us as believers. There is a series of commands in verses 1 through 7. List them in your own words. So let's just walk through this real quick. First command in verse 1, fret not yourself. We don't use the word fret too often in our vocabulary. So how would we say that? What's another way we would say that? Fret not yourself.
Don't worry.
Don't worry. Yeah. Any other way you'd say it?
Don't be anxious.
Don't be anxious. Yeah.
Oh, that's a good word.
Yeah. The second command, be not envious of wrongdoers. What's another word for envy?
Jealous.
Yeah, don't be jealous of them. Yeah. And then verse 3, trust in the Lord. What's another way we would say that? What is David saying in that command? Trust in the Lord.
Trust is always 3 words: trust, faith, and belief.
Yeah. So trust in the Lord, have faith in the Lord, believe in the Lord. Those are all different ways that we can say that. And then verse 4, delight yourself in the Lord. What in the world is that talking about?
I think it's happiness.
Yes, yeah, find your
I don't know how to
happiness in the
translate
Lord.
it and delight yourself. but
Yeah, find your
Be happy.
happiness in the Lord. Yeah, yeah. Be joyful, yeah,
Good.
yeah. Find your joy, your hope in the Lord. And then verse 5, commit your way to the Lord. What's another way we might say that? Commit your way to the Lord.
Pledge.
Yeah, yeah. That has the idea of making that commitment.
Follow.
Yes, yeah, that would be included to follow.
Kind of, I almost an opposite, give up your own way.
Sure,
you know,
yeah,
Surrender, yeah.
yeah. Surrender would be another
Oh,
word.
that's a good one.
Yeah. I don't remember on Sunday, I talked about the root of that word that's translated commit in the ESV is the word to roll. And so, the idea is, you roll your life, yourself, your troubles, everything on the Lord. One of the commentators put it this way, this is to dislodge the burden from your shoulders and lay it on God.
And sometimes it's too heavy to lift. So
Yeah,
we
you
need to
just roll it.
it.
And we think of that verse in 1 Peter, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. That's part of the idea in this, this trouble that we see in the world, the things that don't make sense and don't fit with the way we think they should be, can cause us to fret, can make us envious. And David says, just roll all of that onto the Lord. And then, kind of a summary of that picture in verse 7, be still before the Lord and wait patiently for him. And so all of that, is in David's mind, all of those things, that series of commands, in terms of how we respond to what we see in this world that a lot of times doesn't make sense. What are some things that Christians fret about
Oh my
today?
goodness.
Their kids.
Yeah, their kids,
Oh,
for
okay.
sure. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Her parents.
Especially the sandwich generation.
What else comes to your mind?
Money.
What are things?
Money.
Money, for sure. Yeah. Easy to fret about that.
Health.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jobs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
State of our country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All the
Yeah.
things that we see going on, it's easy to fret about all of that. And we need to recognize we do that with, everyday things too. What's happening tomorrow, what happened yesterday, what's coming up. It's easy to let those things cause us to be agitated, anxious, our minds can't get off of them. So this is a real problem, a real challenge.
And they do a lot of that, they talk about it on TV, like everybody's anxious. Everybody's,
Yes, yeah,
everybody, most everybody,
Yeah.
some people
Yeah.
are. But it's such a major problem now
mhm,
with
it is.
anxiety and
Yes.
people worried about this,
Yeah.
worried about that.
Yeah.
But I don't think they
Yeah.
really stressed much until lately. how bad this probably is, you know?
Yeah, and it, it's
I
not
mean,
like
we've heard so much about it lately.
it was going on then in
Oh, yeah.
David's time,
Oh,
but
yes, absolutely.
we have had some things in our society in the last number of years that have really heightened that sense of anxiety, of fretting
Yes.
in
Well,
our
and
lives.
Uncertainty.
Yeah, yeah.
And we also live in information age.
Yes.
Where everything is
We're
dispersed
bombarded by
by
everything.
radio,
Yes.
Yep.
telephone.
That doesn't
Yeah.
help.
And internet, and
Yeah.
it doesn't help, it
Yeah.
makes it
No.
worse.
Yeah, right.
The anxiety worse.
Yeah,
That's
very
right.
definitely.
Yeah.
So question 3, we are not to fret or be envious because of evildoers. That's what the command is in verse 1. Why not? According to verse 2. Why should we not fret because of evildoers?
They got their due at some point.
Yeah,
Okay,
It's interesting at this point, it's like you've seen all of it.
yes,
It speaks with a lot of authority.
yeah, yeah. They will soon fade like the grass, they will wither like the green herb. So, part of the answer that David gives is, look ahead, take a longer view of things. What you see right at this moment isn't going to be the way that it always is. There will be justice and right that is won. And this whole psalm really intends to reaffirm that. That's what we see in question 4. What do the following verses add to the reason we shouldn't fret because of evildoers? What do we see in verse 9? Don't fret. Why?
They will be cut off.
They'll be cut
Yeah,
off.
they're going to be cut off. That's going to happen. What about verse 13? Why should we not fret because of evildoers? Yeah, judgment is coming.
My verse says the Lord laughs.
Yes,
mine
the
too.
Lord laughs. How does
Really?
that
Yeah,
help
the Lord
us?
laughs at the wicked.
That statement, the Lord laughs at the wicked. What should that do for us to know that's true?
He's got everything good.
Okay, yeah,
He's in
Well,
charge.
yeah,
what
yeah,
they're doing is so futile and so,
yeah,
Kind of weakens the evildoers, you think?
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. We look at some of the things that go on in our world, our society, and these are kind of scary things.
Yeah.
And the threats, David's talking about evildoers, about wrongdoers, people who are bad. And those threats can seem overwhelming to us. And David tells us, God laughs at them. He is not anxious about what the evildoers are doing. He's not, oh no, how can I stop them? He's not doing that. He is not worried. It's challenging for us because it looks pretty scary from our perspective. But David reminds us, don't fret. The Lord laughs at the wicked.
I can't think that he laughs and that he thinks it's funny,
Right.
but that he knows how ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And they're not going to get their way, even
Right.
though they think they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. How about verse 15? How should that help us not to fret?
Well, kind of like they're gonna do themselves in somewhat too.
Yeah.
I wonder if they do themselves in as much as they do each other in.
Well, and that could be too.
Yes.
But we see that happen sometimes. The person who is charging ahead and thinks they're doing great and it's all wonderful, and then that thing that they're after turns on them and ends up being the cause for things to fall apart. Sometimes we actually see that happen. And God says that's the way that it is. And how about verse 17? How does that help us?
What's got a promise? The Lord upholds the righteous.
Yes, Yeah,
The wicked aren't gonna win.
yes, yeah. No, the arm of the wicked can seem very powerful. We can't stop them. Their arm is so strong. But God says the arms of the wicked will be broken. He is able. And just, seeing some of these verses, that really that same point made over and over again in this psalm, it's repeated purposely for emphasis. You can trust God. He does have this under control. One of the reasons we fret, one of the reasons we might be envious is, those people seem to have it easy, have it good, have it made. They want something and they have it, they get it, and it works for them, And so question 5 says, give an example of the benefit of postponing an immediate good for a greater future gain. With the thought, does society encourage delayed gratification? And of course it doesn't. It encourages get gratified right at this moment.
Yeah.
But what are some examples of where there's a benefit from postponing the immediate good?
I laugh about this because I have to teach this to students.
Sure. Oh, I'm sure you run into that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so you want to do all these social activities. That's great that you want to do that, but you might need to cut back on some of those in order to pass your class.
Mhm. Yeah.
And there's a lot of teaching of the management of their life in terms of postponing immediate gratification. They want that immediacy all the time.
Yeah.
How old are these kids?
Oh, I teach college.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So they're 18, 19, 20, 21. Yeah. But there's a whole generation now, and even my own boys are like this, but although they're less because I made them work. The immediate gratification of video games has set this immediate gratification in them in all aspects of their life. I think that's my theory.
Oh, I mean that's a piece of it.
Yeah,
Sure.
the constant need to feel fulfilled in whatever they're doing has to be immediate.
So since you bring it up, I read an article today that talked about how you've seen the virtual reality goggles and even they're, I don't know if they can
Operators.
feel
Yeah.
things, and so one of the things they're talking about now is they described it as augmented reality babies. So you don't need to wait to have a baby. You can just put on the goggles, the gloves, and you can experience this new baby. And you don't have to worry about diapers and crying.
So it's like virtual pets.
It
Yeah.
basically is.
Yeah, because
but
they're
it's
virtual
a
pets, and if
baby.
you don't feed the pet, it dies.
Oh dear.
But it's a baby,
Yeah, but it's baby. Yeah.
And so, just that mindset that's out there. And the article talked about, it's simply not true that a life free of responsibility is the one which will produce the most happiness. As any parent knows, real kids are noisy, expensive, and inconvenient. There are days when they seem to be constantly taking our reserves of energy and sometimes the last strands of patience, but they're worth it.
Yeah.
And, but here, don't need to bother with any of that.
Yeah, if you
I
don't-
just have my baby.
Yeah. And if you don't take care of it, it's no big deal.
Right.
Right. Right. So,
It perpetuates.
there are those
Yeah.
things that our society is just, and the danger is that we get pulled into that and struggle then to be able to believe, even though that person or that group seems to be prospering, even though they're rebelling against God, I can trust God. I don't need to be jealous of them. I don't need to fret because of them. He will take care of it at his time and his way.
That's how you should pray then.
Yes,
I mean, if that's
Yeah.
happening and you could see it
yeah,
and you're not sure what to do, then that's what you do.
yeah,
I would do the.
yeah,
You know, as we get older, you know, time just goes faster and faster. And so, you know, we see the benefit of doing something the right way back here, because you're here before you know it.
yeah,
But it's hard
Yeah.
to tell the person that's back here,
yeah,
because we didn't listen to that very well either.
Yeah.
But, you know, David being older here, you can,
looks back.
yeah.
So question 6. Does verse 4 mean that God will give us whatever we ask for, whatever we want, whatever we desire? Are there any limits on this
I
promise?
could put Anno down that one.
Delight yourself in the Lord, and he will give you the desires of your heart.
That could be a matter of timing.
Okay?
Yeah, I mean, that's the way I
So
would
that
put
would
it.
be part of it
Because
for
some
sure.
things you desire, and maybe you desire for a long time, and then it does happen, but maybe it was just something that took a long time to get there.
Yeah,
You know, I'm not,
yeah, so that would be part of.
I think
the
he will
picture.
do it, it's just maybe a matter of timing.
Yeah,
I
What-
kind of thought maybe it was like not a promise for those who want things, but
okay,
for those who want more of God in their
Okay.
lives. That's
Yeah.
kind of how I
yeah,
took
I
that.
think
That's a good one.
if we're delighting ourselves in the Lord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our desires won't be frivolous.
yeah, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and so that first phrase really governs the second one. You know, we need to recognize that. Yeah, so delighting in the Lord, that God is the one that fills us, that is the most important thing. You know, the language, delight yourself in the Lord, can be used in the context of marriage and newlyweds. You know, these two people can't stand to be apart, you know, can't talk about anybody else. You know, and David says, delight yourself in the Lord. You know, that's what we should be doing. Yeah. So, question 7. The wicked being cut off, or the NIV has destroyed, is mentioned 5 times in this psalm. What other images portray how they will be frustrated eventually in their plans? So what's the image that we see in verse 20? How the wicked will be frustrated in their plans.
Oh, is that where there was the tree and then the tree just died and there never was ever any evidence that it was ever even there?
So,
Or am I?
And verse 20,
No, that's 35. I'm sorry. I was-
yes, that's so verses 35 and 36.
Say that, yeah.
That picture of the tree, and it dies, it's gone, and then that phrase at the end, you know, I looked and couldn't find him. It like it wasn't there at all. So that imagery in verses 35 and 36. And what about in verse 20? What's the image there?
Vanishing smoke.
Yeah, just it's smoke. There's nothing real, nothing substantial to it at all. It just disappears. And then recognizing, you know, a lot of the imagery in this psalm, there's a lot of a mention of the idea of the land.
oh,
And just recognizing how important that would have been to the people in that culture, you know, to have land and to have that be yours, you know, that gave stability, made things work and fit. And, you know, the wicked says are going to be cut off. And the idea especially is cut off from the land. They won't have any land. But the righteous will inherit the land. The land will be theirs. And just to recognize that picture, that imagery that's there as well. And then we see that in the next question, question 8. What does David mean by the meek in verse 11? And in what setting does Jesus refer to this verse in the New Testament? You know, the meek shall inherit the land. What does David mean by meek?
Humble?
Humble would be another word that we could use. there any other way that you think of?
Servant.
Yeah, having a servant attitude, a servant heart. Is there any other language that you think of to describe the meek?
Not demanding.
Yeah. What's the context, the setting that Jesus refers to this person?
Sermon on the Mount.
Yeah, the Sermon on the Mount, the Beatitudes.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit.
The earth.
Yeah, and so Jesus quotes from this psalm in that context. The other word that gets used for this word is in the fruit of the Spirit. So fruit of the Spirit, which word in fruit of the Spirit can be translated meek? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control.
Gentleness.
Yeah, gentleness is another way that this word gets translated. And the picture that we should have in our mind when we see this word is the picture from Philippians chapter 2 of Jesus, who, though he existed in the form of God, did not regard equality with God as a grasp, but emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, being made in human likeness. You know, that's the example of what meekness, humility, gentleness means. And that's how God calls us then to live and respond to these things that we see in our world that seem so messed up and so wrong.
Was he kind of stressing too that being meek doesn't mean you're being weak? That meekness and weakness are not the same, or?
That's an interesting statement, and I would generally say yes, you know, and because Jesus was meek, but not weak. You know, he acted in meekness consciously, purposefully, from a position of strength. You know, Jesus says in the context of the Garden of Gethsemane, you know, I could call 12 legions of angels. You know, he didn't have to go through what he did. He wasn't weak. But the thing that we should recognize is, from the perspective of the world,
Oh, sure.
if you are acting with meekness, you will often be perceived as being weak.
Yes.
It will look like you
Yeah.
are weak.
Yeah.
And that's part of the challenge of being meek,
Yeah.
is we don't like to appear weak. So, but that's what he calls us to do.
But boy, when you're faced with a situation where you could step out and be very strong with someone,
Mhm.
and you decide to step back, it takes so much
Yeah.
strength
Yeah,
to do
Yeah.
that, which is something the other person doesn't see at all.
right,
No,
right.
that would be
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, but you know inside that only God helped you do that, and that took strength.
I remember seeing a definition of meekness being strength under control.
Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
Wow, that's
a good one.
yeah. Yeah, strength under control.
Diane would
Yeah.
like that one.
See, that would write it down,
Yeah.
what you're talking about. You
But
know,
that, you know, that really does picture Jesus, you know, that way of looking at it really fits with his action. So one of the things we talked about that we can stress over, fret over, be jealous and envious is in the area of money. So question 9, what proverbial wisdom do you see here with regard to money matters? I'm looking at verses 16 to 21, verses 25 and 26. What are some of the proverbial truths that are put forward here in regard to money?
He's never seen the righteous descendants begging for bread.
Yeah. And isn't that a challenging statement? Have we ever seen the descendants of the righteous begging for bread? Does that ever happen? We would say, yeah.
Yeah.
There have been cases where, you know, a righteous person, their family ends up in poverty and begging for bread.
But if the church is doing their job, they won't
Okay.
have to.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's part of the challenge of this psalm is, you know, how do we understand some of these truths that are here? You know, and you go back to verse 16. Better is the little that the righteous has than the abundance of many wicked. Really?
You just look at Hollywood and that verse shows true.
But wouldn't it be nice to have a little more than the little? Oh, yeah. Is it really better to have the little? Wouldn't it be better to be righteous and have the much? You know, I mean, it's a challenging statement to really believe that and live that it's better to have the little that the righteous has than the abundance of the wicked.
You see it in, I mean, it isn't every situation, but so often the kids that grew up in a family where they had to work and help out because it was just a tougher situation, oftentimes, you know, they turn out so much better than,
The one that's just given everything.
yes.
Yeah.
I think of some of the folks that have little didn't know how little they actually had, you know.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing. You hear that,
Oh, yeah.
you know, that, you know,
Thank you.
growing up now, I look back and realize, oh, we were poor. But I didn't know we were poor,
Right.
you know, because they, you know,
Well, everybody else was poor, right?
yeah,
Yes.
yeah. What about verse 21? What does that tell us about the contrast between the righteous and the wicked in terms of how they approach money?
That's selfish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
In
wicked,
contrast, the righteous, what characterizes them?
they give. So the rich take and the poor give is what it's most.
Giving versus hoarding, holding tightly to everything
And
they
they
have.
probably have a whole lot less to give.
Yeah,
And yet
yeah.
they still do it.
Yeah, yeah,
Don't statistics show that?
yes, yeah. It's not the rich that give the most percentage wise. Yeah. So we want to take a look at question 10. And this is actually going back to its 1 Kings, not 2 Kings. But recognizing that, you know, some of these things are challenging as we look at things in this world and how things work sometimes. So 1 Kings chapter 21, verses 2 and 3, first of all. This is during the time of Elijah, King Ahab of the northern kingdom of Israel, and his wife Jezebel. So 1 Kings 21, starting verse 2, and after this Ahab said to Naboth, give me your vineyard that I may have it for a vegetable garden, because it is near my house. And I will give you a better vineyard for it, or if it seems good to you, I'll give you its value in money. But Naboth said to Ahab, the Lord forbid that I should give you the inheritance of my father. Then if you go down to verses 9 and 10, Jezebel gets involved and ends up saying, she wrote in letters that she sent to the leaders of the city, proclaim a fast and set Naboth at the head of the people and set 2 worthless men opposite him and let them bring a charge against him saying, you have cursed God and the king, then take him out and stone him to death. And that's exactly what happened. They set a trap basically for Naboth. He comes, they accuse him, drag him out, stone him to death. Naboth loses his vineyard. Ahab gets what he wants. how do we reconcile this with what we are reading in Psalm 37? What do we do with things like this that we see?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes,
there's more to the story. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Ahab and Jezebel end up not ending very well. And so part of it is the long view.
But I do think that those are the things that we question most often regarding God. Is that we don't understand why some who are righteous are taken from us so
Mhm.
early.
Yeah,
And we,
Yeah.
and it's just hard for us to understand.
yes. And it is.
Even though there's the promise of eternity and their reward in heaven,
Yeah.
it's just plain hard to understand because we live on this earth
Yeah.
and it's
Deal with
different than
the
spiritual.
realities of time and space and,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just difficult.
yeah.
So we look at this and we say, well, how does that seem fair?
Mhm.
And,
Yeah.
you know,
And the reality was, it was not fair.
yeah.
You know, it was wrong, it was horrible, but
And when,
that's what happened.
and when you go back to the verse that says, and I wondered this when we were talking about it, but I didn't bring it up then, but the verse that says, if you delight in the Lord, he will give you the desires of your heart.
Mhm.
I can't remember how many times I prayed for people.
Sure.
And didn't get the answer that I thought
Yeah.
God would give, because I thought my heart was set
Mhm.
on the Lord, and
Yeah.
it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, one of the things that in situations like that, because that's same with mom, you know, I pray that she won't get a UTI and then this happens and it's like, how, you know, why is this happening? And there's worse things. But we're living in a world that's sinful and we are affected by that
Mhm.
too.
That's a part of it, yeah.
And there's just gonna be things that happen that just aren't fair.
And
Or
they
aren't-
can't be explained.
Right, but yeah, God can take and use those,
Yeah.
you know, but sometimes we don't even see that happening with some things, but
Yeah.
we live in a world that's
Broken.
broken, yeah, yeah.
You know, you look at like verse 25, you know, I've been young, now I'm old, yet I've not seen the righteous forsaken or children begging for bread. But then look at verse 24, the first phrase, talking about the righteous, though he fall. You know, and so it's not that nothing bad will ever happen to the righteous,
Right.
but God will be there. God will help him to stand up again. You know,
And
God holds him.
God uses that for
Yes.
a purpose.
Yeah, yeah,
Whatever that purpose is.
yeah.
If we let them.
And
I think
and
sometimes
we don't,
mess it up.
well,
Yeah.
sometimes we do. But I also don't always think we know or see it in the end
I
result.
don't-
Right.
I think
We
that's
don't.
right.
No,
Yeah. It's, our view is limited.
right.
And so that, you know, that's part of, you know, that, you know, the kind of the outline answer that you know, some of the commentators take with this, you know, that I talked about on Sunday, you know, one of the things that we have to do is look ahead. You know, we got to see farther down the road than our immediate, you know, like with Ahab and Jezebel, you know, justice did come. It took a while, you know, it was challenging to get there, but to take the long view, and then we're called to look up, you know, and keep our eyes focused on the Lord. And that's where the answer is.
You know,
Yeah.
It's
I-
taking the eternal view.
Yes, yes.
I've heard stories, and I can't think of anything in particular right now, but of people who were just awful to other people, just terrible people. And after years and years and years, these people have come to know the Lord.
Mhm.
And, you know, if God would have struck them dead, like we maybe would have wished, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
You're glad it didn't.
right.
yeah.
But we don't always see those things.
And sometimes we do.
Yeah, I think of that student of
Yeah.
yours.
Adam,
Yeah.
yeah. And, you know, I have other stories like that.
Yeah.
So
And
sometimes you do see.
that's
that.
nice that God lets
Yeah.
you experience some of that,
Yeah,
because
there's,
that
there's
encourages you.
joy,
Yeah,
yeah, to keep working,
Yeah.
and keep doing it.
yeah.
Can I just share something? Because you all know my situation. But the verse that kind of gave me peace about how going home was from Job 14:5. You have decided the length of our lives. You know how many months we will live, and we are not given a minute longer.
Mhm.
So it doesn't matter if it's COVID or whatever. That was the race marked out.
Mhm.
What
Yeah.
verse was that?
Job 14:5. And that's from the New Living Translation.
Yeah.
I can question, but it
Mhm.
doesn't do any good.
Yeah,
Right, right,
yeah,
right.
but we can, you know,
Rest
the long
in the
view
Lord.
and trust in the Lord
Yep.
and look to him. Let's look at a couple of these things just as we close. Question 11 says, what are the benefits that come to the righteous in the end? What are some of the things that you see in these verses that stand out to you? Verse 28, 29, 33, 37, 39, and 40. What are some of the benefits that David highlights in this psalm for the righteous?
They will be protected forever.
Yeah,
Lord shall help them,
yeah, yeah,
deliver them.
yeah,
We'll never be deserted. He's
Yeah.
gonna always be there with us.
yes, yeah,
I'm assuming when he talks about inheriting the land, he's referring to the new earth and the new heaven.
well, and ultimately, that's what we have to say.
Yeah.
You know, because sometimes they don't inherit the land
Right.
physically here,
Right.
but, you know, it is, you know, we can keep in mind that it is talking about the new heaven and the new earth. You know, the meek will inherit the earth. That's what Jesus says. But other than we never see that meek person inherit any earth. But in Christ, there is a new earth that he will be given land, you know, forever to enjoy for eternity. Naboth, you know, lost his vineyard.
His life.
He lost his life, he lost his vineyard, but he will have an inheritance on that new earth. He'll have a really good vineyard,
Yeah.
you know,
And what will
it'll
they
last
have?
forever.
What
It's
will
kind of
they
like
have
Job.
in them?
Job lost everything,
Yep.
but he got it back. But
Yeah,
this is, you know, in heaven, and you're
Yeah.
gonna get it back tenfold. probably.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. So, yeah.
With much better neighbors.
Yeah, so it's important to remember, you know, the promise that God makes. You know, verses 39 and 40, the salvation of the righteous is from the Lord. He is their stronghold in a time of trouble. The Lord helps them, delivers them, he delivers them from the wicked, saves them because they take refuge in him. There's great promises, great hope as we follow the Lord. And then just question 12 says, describe the relationship between the wicked and the righteous in verses 32 and 40. What are some things that stand out to you in those verses about the relationship between the righteous and the wicked?
Well, the wicked are just hiding there waiting for us.
Yeah,
Ready to slay us.
Right.
so that, you know, danger and concern, and, you know, they're wicked people that are out to attack. We need to recognize that. But what is our hope? In contrast to the wicked, standing, waiting, looking for their chance.
Well, the Lord's not just leaving us out there on our
Right.
own. He's gonna be there to help us.
Yeah. There is a future for the man of peace, it says at the end of verse 37.
I have to remember too, that when I read this, thinking how unrighteous I am. And this is
Yeah.
only because of Christ's
Yeah.
righteousness.
Yes.
Yeah,
Identify as the righteous.
yeah,
We could so easily Be on the other side.
Now we look at that word righteous, think about that word justice, and there should be that sense of fear, because boy, pure justice is what I'm in trouble. But Jesus took that judgment in my place. And so now I can stand before God in Christ's righteousness and be confident and know that these promises are mine, not because I earned it or deserved it, because Jesus is righteous in my place.
There's 43, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
The Lord helps
Yeah.
them and delivers them. He delivers them from the wicked and saves them because they take refuge in him.
And that's a good place to end, is that call to take refuge in the Lord. Let's pray as we close. Lord, thank you for these promises and these statements that are true, even though sometimes we struggle to see it or understand it. Lord, help us to believe, because sometimes in this world, there are things that don't fit this picture, but that's because we can't see the big picture. Lord, help us to be able to trust you, to run to you, to take refuge in you, even when trouble comes. Help us, because we do tend to fret, to get anxious, to get agitated, to get heated. Lord, help us to trust in you. Thank you for this time. Thank you so much for each one that could be here and participate. Lord, may your word work in our hearts and lives. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank you very much for the good discussion. Next week, we're going to be looking at Psalm 56.